Sally, we've got another chair here too. Yeah, so we're good to go. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Lakewood City Council study session agenda for this Monday, September 25, 2023. Welcome to all of you here in the audience, as well as those of you participating over Zoom. We welcome all of you. Tonight, we have 3 items for discussion, the first of which is our joint Lakewood Arts Commission meeting. We have 2 members of the council absent tonight for illnesses, and Patty Bell, your liaison, extends her well wishes and thanks for all of your hard work. She wishes she could be here and wanted me to express her gratitude for all you do. So we'll get into that in a minute, but you are first on the docket here tonight. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. We'll go around the room because some of our new members may not know all of you, and then we'll kind of jump into the work plan. Sure. Yep. Feel free to use the mic there, please.
Okay. Hi, thank you for having us, Council. My name is Sylvia Estrella, and I'm a member of the Lakewood Arts Commission, and I'm happy to be here.
Good evening, Your Honor and distinguished council persons. I'm Daryl Owens, and I'm on the Lakewood Arts Commission, and it's been a pleasure on my second time around on the Arts Commission and watching everything that's transpiring in Lakewood. And as a longtime Lakewood resident, it's an amazing thing to see the transformation of the city and where we're headed, and it's great to be part of it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and respected members of the council, good evening. Lua Pritchard, Executive Director of Asia Pacific Culture Center and a very proud member of the Lakewood Arts Commission. Thank you.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lonnie Neal, and Earl, I think I'm on my 3rd round now to come on being on the Arts Commission. I've been involved for at least 6 years, and it has been really, really fun. So pleasure to be a part of the team.
Good to see you. Earl?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Earl Borgert and Vice Chair on the Arts Commission. And I just like to say a good hefty thank you to all of you for supporting some of these projects that we've done around the city, because it's been very interesting kind of being part of this whole transformation. So thank you very much.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Susan Warner, and this is actually my 2nd term on the Arts Commission already, and it's been a delightful experience. And I'm also Executive Director at Lakewell Gardens.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Emily Feline, and I am the Chair of the Arts Commission. We're very excited to be here today to talk about the work that we've done this past year. We've been very busy, worked very hard, and I just would like to echo Earl. We really appreciate your support. So we will go ahead and get started. We'll start with, do we have one more?
And thanks for having us. As always, Paige Hansen. I'm thinking of re-upping for another term. I need to get my application in because I love being on the Arts Commission, and I'm so appreciate. I've been a homeowner in this city since 2001. Raised my kids here. They're in public schools. One just left his tenure there, and I'm loving plugging in. And I just think arts are such an important part, and I know you guys do too. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Paige. I apologize for missing you there. All right, I think we are ready. We'll start, kick it off with Lonnie and Earl to talk about our Latino artist reception.
I get to go first. Yeah, very exciting. On December 5th last year, we had our first group of artists together. It was a Latino-based group prior to that, we had been showcasing one artist at a time. And we kind of launched this new program where we had probably about 5 or 6 artists. And we had just an amazing turnout at both at the reception. And the outcome of that now is we're showcasing one of those artists every quarter. So we have a revolving, they get to bring more pieces and demonstrate more things. And the artist reception is from 5 to 7. It was by far our biggest turnout that we've ever had.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and we've scheduled our next artist reception for next Monday before your meetings. We hope you're all able to come and join in. We have a saxophone player, Maurice, who's great. He's a lot of fun to listen to, and light hors d'oeuvres
5
and
to 7 again.
from 5 to 7, exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like for the past few years, this is a program that kind of struggled a little bit to gain traction. And this is the first time where it actually really took off. And instead of us having to seek out artists, it seems like they're actually seeking us out to display their art at City Hall, which is a huge plus. And one artist, River, this was her first public debut. And ever since then, her work has definitely been taking off. So this is a program that definitely has potential for years to come.
Let me ask a quick question on that. Are we outgrowing our space a little bit out there in the foyer? Is there a possibility to bring stuff into this main area? Would you want to? How are you feeling about the space to accommodate the growing success of the program?
We would definitely like to occupy some of this space. So some of that has come down to the artists and how much work they have to show. But one of our artists, Mauricio, who was definitely part of some of the first launch of this, had enough pieces. We talked about spilling over into these other spaces and potentially even hanging some things here in council chambers. Yeah, so we're open to that discussion. It's really just if the artists have enough pieces to show, because they also are rotating things from other galleries and other places where they're showing.
Okay, very good.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Mhm.
I mean, and that could definitely have a lot of potential to it. So yeah, thank you for that thought.
Sure, yeah, and I'm sure Sally or Mary could help coordinate if need be spillover space to use behind the gallery here for opportunities, bring some color to the chambers for sure. Great.
Thank you. Next up is Lua and Phil to talk about the Christmas parade.
Yes. Last year, December 10th, we had a Christmas parade and it was a great turnout. For some of you council members who were there, I'm sure you can vouch for that. Military Brass Band did a wonderful job. Clover Park School District had over 300 families who showed up and joined the parade. They really went all above and beyond Call of Duty for it. It was just an exciting time for the city and all of us who participated. Phil was Santa Claus, and for the first time, we had an African-American Santa Claus, and it was really good and well received. So we're looking forward to, again, this December. And please come out and be with us if you have the time. And we were there, rain or shine, so it was really good.
As were we.
Yes, thank you.
Mostly rain,
Yes.
light on shine.
All right, and Daryl is now going to talk about our signal box installations.
Okay, 2023 saw the inclusion of 10 new signal boxes to add to the 10 we had already. And if I could get the assistance of Sally, we have a couple of wonderful boards here that illustrate what we've done up to this point. Pretty amazing. So 10 new artists this year. Among them is a young gentleman named Sam Reed. And this came about because the commission had decided that we wanted to showcase young talented artists, specifically from the Lakewood area. And Sam has really thrust himself into what we're trying to do. He's created a feature called Make the Future, and we'll kind of get into a little bit of Sam's accomplishments a little later when we talk about the Fiesta, but Sam has brought quite a bit to what we feel is already a pretty strong contingent of artists here. One of the things that I continually hear, and some of it is from some of the staff and workers with the city, is these signal boxes are wonderful to look at and very easy to maintain. And, you know, they bring a lot of pride to the city. So some of the new artists this year are Juan Latore, and he is of course featured this month and this quarter. His work is displayed, I'm happy to say, right outside my employer on the corner of Hagness Drive and Stoughton Boulevard, as well as Jose Arantes, whose work is displayed on Stoughton and Lakeview Avenue. River Meshi, as we spoke of a few minutes earlier, her work is displayed on South Tacoma Way. Laura Martinez, wonderful artist, is displayed. And I want to bring to mention someone a lot of you are very, very familiar with, longtime artist and resident, Chuck Matthias, who's known from everything from creating the wonderful works of art for the Tacoma Speedway, Lakewood Historical Society, and it just goes on and on and on, Film Arts Book Festival. He has a signal box representation now as well. So this is just a few of the 10 new artists that we have. It's a wonderful collection and vibrancy that we're very, very proud of in the city of Lakewood. So thank you.
Daryl and or Sally, just approximately, what is the cost per signal box that we're seeing typically?
All in, it's about $2,200. And it also depends, we pay the artist a stipend of $700 per box. And some have 2 boxes and some just have 1.
Got it. Okay. It's, the other council members I'm sure will comment, but I have received just a plethora of positive comments on the signal boxes. People love the color and the vibrancy and the pizzazz it adds to the downtown corridor and certainly the other streetscape. So, you know, really good work on that. Yeah, people love that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. That's great.
Yep.
Next up is Sylvie, our resident videographer, to talk about our MLK video.
Thank you for having me. Okay, so this year, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. That's a quote by Martin Luther King in his Drum Major Instinct. One of his final speeches 2 months before he was killed. So this year we featured 6 local heroes who give back to our community and beyond. The videos were released daily the week prior to MLK, with the final video being a call to action with messages on how to volunteer in the community and info on visiting Lakewood's website for possible volunteering opportunities. This year, our videos included several heroes, 6 of them to be exact. A college student who felt a calling to volunteer in a food bank, remembering that his family, raised by a single mother, was helped by a food bank when he was younger. Deputy Mayor Moss was featured, and she spoke on her involvement promoting diversity in our community by founding LMCC, working in the community to honor and uplift people of all backgrounds. One of West Pierce Fire and Rescue's own was featured this year, Mr. Olmos. He is a native of Bolivia who came to our country and served in the military, wanted to give back because he said he was helped by so many when he first came to this country. So he volunteers as a coach, and his grown children are volunteering as well, creating legacy. Our own giant slayer of barriers, fierce advocate of BIPOC, Lua Pritchard, Executive Director of Asia Pacific Cultural Center, was featured as well, and her desired legacy is for, and I quote, people getting along, people loving each other in sincerity, people helping each other and making a difference for each other. These heroes embody the spirit of Lakewood. Love people, love your community by giving back to your community. It was a great week and I thoroughly enjoyed interviewing everyone and it's just it's so uplifting to see so many people in this community and how people come together and people are doing things in the community to help. And it can be, you know, everything from working at a food bank as a college student to someone older that's mentoring younger people. And it's just so necessary. And the spirit of Lakewood is love Lakewood. And I think that's what we're promoting in this community. And just every year that I've been honored to do this project, it's so different, but the message is still the same. It's all about community. It's all about furthering people. And this year, I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it, but this year it's about students. And I'm so excited to be, we have an amazing community and the students, like everything that it's the next generation and we're feeding into this generation, recreating a community for the future. So thank you.
All right, and now we have Susan to talk about the Gateway Arc Sculpture.
Oh, yes, the Gateway Arts sculpture. We had a ribbon cutting for it April 1st. John Fleming is a Seattle-based artist. He's an architect, conceptual artist, and environmentalist. And I think we will all agree that the bookends, as they've been nicknamed, provide another fabulous point of interest in our community as we continue to install public art, making it so attractive to the community. And one of the things that John wanted to do, and frequently does do in his work, is solicit community feedback. And we had 112 people participate in creating the wonderful little sayings that you can read on the sculptures. It's really gratifying to see our city transformed with interesting art. And just echoing Lani, folks wrote about why they like to live here in Lakewood. So it was really a wonderful project. And we had multi-generations of people participate. So it's a very worthwhile and beautiful project. So thank you for supporting it.
All right, and now we have Paige.
Council members, thanks so much for having us and for being so supportive of the Arts Commission. It's been cool the whole time I've been on the commission, seeing how supportive the council is. You know, it's not a battle. It's something we all want. And one of the things that I'm passionate about as a performing artist is music and performing arts, which unlike visual arts kind of are more ephemeral, but who doesn't remember wandering through the park, you know, getting a sack of cherries from the farmer's market, and then, oh, there's a concert. You want to stay and watch some music? Maybe you stay, maybe you don't. Maybe you just enjoy some music. But you remember the music kind of adds to the whole experience. And we have this beautiful Fort Silicon Park, which I tell people is like the Stanley Park that New York has, but that we have in Lakewood. We can actually park more people in that park than any regional facility I can think of besides like Marymore. Maybe that's the closest. I mean, huge amount of parking. So people can really just bring the kids, bring up, you know, I see a lot of those wagons that people pull out, fill up with groceries. You don't got to carry it. You can just roll it on over. So there's a good synergy we have there with the 9 summer concerts we had this year. Best turnouts to date, roughly up to 400 people per concert. So that's great for a weeknight, you know, but great weather. And we see now that, you know, as we learn when we live here, it all changes in the winter time. So we've got to enjoy the heck out of that park. Good synergy with that farmer's market. And we do have some live music while people are shopping as well. It's not, you know, it costs money to pay musicians. So hopefully we can get more and more music. And I know y'all would be supportive of that. People shop, get dinner, and then they picnic at the concert if they would like. We were happy to kick off the concert series with an all new drum circle that our drummer on the Arts Commission, Daryl, pulled together. And if you haven't been to a drum circle, it's a wonderful experience everyone should have. And the America's first core military band performed for no charge, which is something that they do, and how appropriate in our community with all of our military who live here to have them at our wonderful series. So we did include also genres of music from country to pop and soul, which is really appropriate for our diverse community that we live in. So go performing arts. Let's keep them going. Let's fill that pavilion, that beautiful pavilion, with as much music as we can. As you all know, it's so wonderfully successful.
Hey, Paige, we've got a couple questions before you go. Yeah.
Yes.
We're gonna have you sing the Star Spangled
Oh.
Banner.
In an alto key.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson had a question.
Yeah, well, thank you. One thing I saw when these started, we have a concentration of adult family homes in Oak Brook, very close to the park. And there seemed to be kind of a bubble of attendance where some of the operators brought their residents over who are generally shut-ins to begin with, and I haven't seen that since then. Is there, am I just there the wrong day, or do you think we might need something to reach out to those folks and have them, give them the opportunity to get out and participate in the community?
I think that's a wonderful idea. There is, not everyone can go to Jazz Alley. It's really expensive to go see a concert and have dinner. And it's important, that we do support music by buying tickets and being a patron of the arts. But as a city, what a great thing to offer a concert for no charge. You can make it whatever you want, especially during the good weather months. I'm a big advocate of maybe looking at different times for this, because sometimes, a weeknight's not convenient for everyone. Sometimes a Saturday is more convenient. So I've been talking to my fellow commission members about possibilities around, like I said, the pavilion's there. And when we have good weather, daytime hours, we can get stuff going over there. But, we should pay musicians, obviously, but maybe we can find some grants and whatnot to help in that effort, utilizing the military. But yeah, and definitely maybe even doing more proactive, like let's make this a concert that these folks particularly would like to go see. Certainly, it's a great idea.
Couple of questions while we have you on the mic there. So feedback from the artists with regard to the venue. Do they feel like the venue's a good one, that the sound? And the reason why I ask is I think Sally and Mary Dodsworth are working on or budgeting for some baffling or whatever it's called to better either amplify or project the sound. Have you received much feedback from the
Well,
artists?
I work at KNKX, and we sponsored some concerts at Volunteer Park, which is in Capitol Hill, which reminds me of the Hollywood Bowl, of Seattle. It's got a big bowl, a big upswing of the big lawn. Our pavilion's not unlike that. It's a more shallow slope. So I think that's good. And I love the load-in. The load-in's brilliant. I mean, you could put, we get a jazz group, you could put a grand piano in there. That's what they did for the final concert of that series. They had upright basses and a grand piano. And as you know, that takes a big load-in. But you have that beautiful load-in. You can just roll it right on out. So air conditioning, oh my goodness. I can't think of a venue that has air conditioning in an outdoor pavilion, which is incredible for performers. Also heated during the winter. So it's just tougher, with rain, audience members and whatnot. But I have contacts in the industry. So if we're interested in how Volunteer Park does it, because I do have a beautiful sound system that they rent and put in there, they outsource it, I think is what they do. So I'd be glad to, just pass along info.
Absolutely. I guess my question was, is the feedback from the artists generally positive that the facility provides what they needed to provide to do their job?
Oh, there's a bathroom
Okay.
with flush
I'll take that as
toilets.
a positive.
Volunteer Park barely has that. So yeah, really, this is a premier. I've been talking it up as much as possible. I think Lakewood is really done a great job providing a wonderful venue. So I don't know what
Good.
else to do, but just get the people out.
No,
We could do
absolutely. That's good to
giant
hear.
festivals there, I think.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely good to hear. Well, great.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
changing area.
Well-
It's great.
Truth be told, we did not have running water for many years. So it has been an improvement for sure.
Yeah, it's great potential. Yeah. Let's call it Stevie Wonder. Come on.
Do we have any other questions for Paige?
Nothing yet for Paige on this. I think there may be some general questions from the group unless you have some more to offer.
We do. We have just a couple more things to highlight. We have Daryl and Sylvie. They're going to talk about our Fiesta de la Familia event.
Thanks. So this is the second annual Fiesta de la Familia, and last year it was, what was it last year? Colonial Park Plaza. This year it was at Fort Steilacoom, and it was amazing. Here, you can operate that. There was so much entertainment. There were so many bands and artists. There was something for everyone. And the one thing that I'm so pleased and proud about is that Lakewood chose to recognize my culture. Because I looked it up, and 17.5% of the population of Lakewood is Hispanic. But lots of times we as a culture feel invisible. And this gave my culture an opportunity to come out and be celebrated and celebrate with everyone. It wasn't just Hispanics that were at this festival. Everyone was at this festival, all colors, and there was something for everyone. And it just instilled a sense of pride. And it wasn't just, Hispanics range from Puerto Ricans to Cubans to El Salvadorians to Mexicans it encompasses all Latino cultures. And this was awesome because Sally and the Parks and Rec group, the committee worked so hard to find music in pretty much every Latin culture. So it was just so awesome. Go ahead. The Latino consulate, the Mexican consulate came and we honored them, and they were so pleased. Here's a picture of them together with everyone, and it was really awesome. We had La Catrina and El Catrín, some figures of like Dia de los Muertos, which is a big deal in Hispanic cultures, honoring the dead, honoring ancestors. And our mural that was painted by a Latino girl artist, we had a ribbon ceremony, and the artwork is just vibrant, and there's been really great feedback on it. So it's really wonderful. We had artists, featured Latino artists at the festival, and there was just, go ahead, Daryl, you're going too slow.
Okay.
Can I?
Oops.
Thanks. Okay, we had all kinds of beautiful, beautiful art, and these artists were so pleased to be here and share their art with us. This was the same artist that did the mural in the on the park in the bathroom. And this is one of the artists that was featured in the signal boxes, Jose Orantes. And this is the young Sam Reed. He won the signal box. He was a fan favorite, and he was so excited. I bought one of his framed pictures. I think I was his first sale, and he was just thank you so much. He was so pleased, and his art's really great, and it's really wonderful to support these young artists. Oh, we had a community roots, Raíces Comunitarias. It's a tree that we made, and the premise was to write what your family brings to the community of Lakewood. I'm reading the things. The gun. Some of the families that showed up, they wrote, the Martinez family brings humor to the community. The Battersea family brings community activities.
I think one is going around, the Raphael family brings the wow to the community. And that happens to be my son-in-law. He's kind of a jokester. The Webster family brings love and laughter. All these leaves represent people in the community, not just Hispanics, but everybody, and they all wrote something different. The Levine family brings kindness. You know, it's so cool to like everybody getting together and just, yeah, I do bring something to this community. It's all about just coming together and creating a community of diversity and inclusion. So this was awesome. One of our artists, Roberto Sanchez, made an ofrenda, which is for Dia de los Muertos normally, but it's where people can come in, bring a picture or something to remember their ancestors, someone that is, you know, one of their family members that have died. And so a lot of people brought in pictures, and we had candles for them to, battery operated candles, so they weren't dangerous. And marigolds, which are common for Dia de los Muertos. And so it was really cool. It was very colorful and festive and just honoring your ancestors. And that's it. So thank you so much. And I think we as a committee are really looking forward to next year's Fiesta de la Familia. And we hope all of you will come and attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let you know that LMCC did have that booth there, and the Youth Council took it over. And it was so exciting to see the people coming through that could not speak English, to have the kids talk to them. You could see them light up. It was great, and I appreciate our Youth Council so much. It was a great event. I enjoyed every bit of it. So you guys did a great job. Thank you. One of the things I did get a note on, an email on, is that to have more of those types of events in the park. There was an African person that walked up to me and said, well, we are a culture. When are you going to celebrate us? So we have to keep that in mind as we go forward to continue to diversify. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Lonnie to talk about the mural ribbon cutting with Angelina Villalobos.
Yes, I'm so excited about this mural. Yeah, Angelina, when we originally approached her to do the mural, so this is on the bathroom structure that's right near the playground. We had approached her to do one wall, and it would be the, I guess, what is that? The east facing wall. When you're driving into the park, it's the most prominent one that you see driving in. And after she saw the building, she actually petitioned us and said, I want to wrap this whole thing. Like, let's go for it. And we were all so excited to see her proposal. And I'll pass this around because we don't really have a slideshow of it. But what's clever with what she did, and you'll see it when you're looking at the structure, is all four sides have a little bit of their own story, but she, you know, made the colors and the patterns flow so that everything has got a seamless direction going around it. And I'm just going to read some of her words that she talked about. So like the front of the building with the bathroom doors, she said, for the main side of the building, I wanted to have a mural come out of the water fountains. So you're going to notice that all the colors, so it's like the water and the blue sky actually are flowing out of the water fountain. And then she intentionally put a sun pattern up at this top peak, because that's where there's actually lighting for the bathroom and the entrance at night. So she had some references that way. And then she said that this particular side highlights some of the flowers you'll see in the park. And what was really clever that she did is the men's bathroom is on the left-hand side as you're facing the building. And so she very intentionally put two specific colored flowers at each of the bathroom entrances, because especially being there at the playground, you can say, you know, if you have kids, okay, go in the door. You know, Susie, you go in the door that's got the pink flower on it. And it's just another visual reference, you know, way to delineate the restrooms, which I thought was very clever. So the east wall, this is the one that you see when you're driving in, heading into the park. What she wanted to say is, I wanted to highlight some of the local wildlife that lives in the park that you might encounter. This is to show newcomers and park goers alike that nature lives here and to remember that we are all guests and stewards of this beautiful space. So we all know that there's plenty of deer roaming around here and the bald eagle. Yeah, it's just really on point. She really did her research about Lakewood and Fort Steilacoom Park in our community. And then on the back wall, this is not quite, the colors are not quite accurate in this. But she has the little bunny or the big bunny in the scale. It's kind of fun. And that of course faces, you can partially see that when you're driving in, and then it faces all the soccer fields, and baseball, which, you know, we have a tremendous amount of traction with visitors seeing that. And in this one, she says, this portion of the mural, I wanted to showcase little animals that live in the park. And since it's their natural habitat, we should be conscious that this is their home. And then the final and fourth wall, she said, this is the one that faces the farmer's market, or, you know, the main pathway, celebrating vibrancy and color of the farmer's market and events that happen at the park. This portion of the mural is for the people, the vendors, the neighbors that come and participate in this tradition of the wonderful space. So it's kind of fun. She put the hot air balloons, which is a little bit of a nod to, you know, Summerfest. And then of course the red barns, which, you know, are iconic. So I just love this piece. I'm so passionate about it. And we were able to, I don't know if it was by coincidence, but it was kind of brilliant that she is a Hispanic artist. She's cute. She says, well, my dad's from Mexico City and my mom is Tex-Mex. That's her phrase. So, but she was able to paint the mural during farmer's market. So that just drew a lot of public interest in what was going on with the mural while it was being, you know, constructed. And then we were able to do the ribbon cutting at Fiesta de la Familia, which was just brilliant. And I'll just say one other little thing here is that I just had somebody, this is through social media, a friend of mine who, you know, has another friend, a grandmother who traveled up from Vancouver, Washington to go to her grandkids' event. I don't know if it was a soccer game or a cross-country match, but anyway, this grandmother had come up to Fort Steilacoom Park, took pictures of this bathroom, posted it on her Facebook page, sharing it with everybody that is in her circle, saying, look at this amazing mural. What a beautiful way to make a bathroom be outstanding. And then that came back to me through my friends who knew. Anyway, so hopefully the word is spreading like that.
Well,
Any questions?
Kudos, actually. It was just wonderful. And that was funded with part of the Arts Commission budget or other contributions, or how did we do that? Because it would be wonderful to do more of it, right?
It would be great. It was Arts Commission.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, very good. Well, fantastic. I had the pleasure of being there with the Mexican Consulate General, and he loved it. And he was so impressed with what you folks did with the Fiesta that he wants to do more integration of events and culturally significant occurrences and cultural sharing between the city of Lakewood and, you know, the consulate. And he's from a small town outside of Mexico City. And we talked about maybe engaging in the friendship city leading to a sister city relationship. And he was very excited about that. So the seeds you planted start to grow great relationships. So it'll be really fun to see how that works. Yeah, he was a great guy and his wife was wonderful. They spent a ton of time in the park and we're very excited about what was happening there. So thank you for doing that. Yeah.
All right, that's great. Thank you. All right, we have Susan, who's going to talk about our Arts Commission retreat.
Yes, our retreat is October 17th at Lakewell Gardens. And I just wanted to reflect a little bit on the seriousness and diligence with which the Arts Commission approaches its work. We are really careful about the artists that we select. They are vetted, they have great reputations in the field. And we have a process. We're relatively young as an Arts Commission. And so we are building our processes. And just reflecting on what we've accomplished, it's really amazing and brilliant. And I think now we have to allow ourselves to let our artists go. I mean, trust the process, trust our artists, and not try to manage every aspect of the artist's vision. And I think once we can do that, we will be able to attract and commission even more spectacular art. And so the focus of our retreat is that message, trusting the process, trusting the artist. And we will have a guest speaker from University of Washington, Tacoma, who will talk to us about that and engage us in some activities to help us achieve that. So there it is.
Mr. Anderson.
I just, by analogy, like to comment on that a bit. In public education, my wife was an educator for 40 years. It's sometimes the good of the whole trumps the exceptional. You teach to the middle. I mean, it's just, and you try to bring the people at the lowest up, and sometimes the exceptional left a little to fend for themselves. And I'm afraid in the public process, where a private school can do things differently and aim at the exception. In the public process, sometimes it isn't what we want, but we have to dumb it down a little, because the artist isn't accountable to the public, and the committee has some insulation. Bring exceptional things to us, and we'll try to find things that we can utilize. But sometimes the exceptional is, when it gets controversial, hurts the whole program. So we have to be a little more careful about it than the artist or the committee. So it isn't a criticism of you. Go find the exceptional stuff and bring it. And I really love the mural, by the way. And one of the first things I thought about there was that, well, I'm glad she did a job that's PG for all the kids in the park and didn't have the coyote there with the rabbit. I'm waiting for the coyotes to come to my yard because the rabbits are eating things. So, so that would be a small compromise. If I saw a coyote, it's okay. The kids probably want to see that.
I think that you can rest assured that this committee is very diligent in how it approaches the commissions and working with the artists. I think you can have exceptional artists and exceptional work that is responsible to the public it serves. And I think that's where you can rest assured that this commission will do its diligence.
Anything further, Emily, before I open it up to questions?
I think just one final one from Lua and Earl about the holiday parade.
Well, I can't believe it's getting to be that time of year again. This year went by so fast, and what a summer. And so our holiday parade is definitely going to be on December 9th this year. And I feel that every year that goes by with the next week, we attract more and more people to come out and visit the holiday parade. So I hope everybody tells all of their neighbors and their friends that live in Lakewood and beyond to come out for the holiday parade this year on December 9th.
Is there a particular theme, you know, so that I can get Mr. Anderson, Mr. Boki to dress up?
What was that? Parade of flags.
Lights.
Oh, lights, parade of flags.
We'll wear flags nonetheless. There we go. There we go. Very good. Well, that sounds great.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that is the last update we have for you. And so we just wanted to give all of the council members the opportunity to ask any questions for us.
Absolutely. Any questions of our great Arts Commission or comments? Mr. Boki?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments. Most recent thing first, I guess, the Fiesta. What I loved about the Fiesta was the number of kids. It's just a tremendous turnout of kids. Hopefully we'll have that at Truck and Tractor Day, but it was just a beautiful day, and I think it went incredibly well. And I really appreciated the number of children there and young folks. I appreciate Sammy. I know it means a lot to him and to his family that they were chosen. He was chosen for his boxes. I think that's really exciting. I do believe bang for the buck. I got to think the signal wraps are just I can't think of another almost thing we practically do as a city where we get more bang for the buck than we do for the signal wraps. And you've done such an outstanding job of picking out. They're just really vibrant colors and really neat things. The mayor will speak to he agreed to purchase another piece of art when the landmarks and historical people were there, but I'll let you talk about that. The race car driver, the race car.
I can bring that up, yeah. I don't know if I necessarily agreed on behalf of all of you, but I'm always one who likes to come out in front and, you know, suggest things strongly, for sure. If there are any other comments or questions, I do have a few thoughts. Mr. Lorcella first, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to all of you. It's clear you're really passionate about representing our community and embracing our diversity and including everyone as we build things. So I really appreciate that. And just a couple of questions. One, there was talk of a mural at the town center at some point. Is that still on the docket as a plan to go forward? A mural here in the town center. I know that was part of discussion before.
So we looked at the wall right across the street and met with the town center management. In the end, having the contract just got complicated and it was going to really slow things down. I think they were interested. It would just be a slow process.
Okay, thank you. And then echoing what the mayor had brought up about future murals at our bathrooms in our public parks, I think is a great idea. That the first one at Fort Steilacoom is really amazing. I like it. So more of that would be good. And then I wanted to check in with as you said, to trust the process. We got burned a little bit by that in April, as everyone remembers. And I recall that was on the agenda to come in and talk about what that process was going to be going forward. I saw that got bumped out. Can we make that a priority for the Arts Commission to bring that in sooner than I think right now it's scheduled for March. It was scheduled for November before that.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm familiar with what happened, and there are things that we can put in place to prevent that from happening in the future.
Great, thank you. I know, I believe other members of council may be with me on this, that we want to understand that process and see where we can have at least some sort of cursory review of items before they get released. So, thank you.
Good question, good point. You know, we developed through the Arts Commission and approved it by council a public arts policy some years ago. And so that might be an outcome of the retreat in part, that you tweak, modify, update the
Yes.
public arts policy to bring forward to council for another study session opportunity with all of us. Talking about that, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just had a couple of other comments. Number one, I'm gonna say, yeah, mic off there. Sorry about that. It's a funky sound system. I wish it was under control of the Arts Commission. It would be better. I was on the Arts Commission years ago as a liaison for a number of years, as some of you may recall. And I just want to say that the energy and enthusiasm you folks are bringing to the table in the last couple of years has just been wonderful and fabulous. I want to thank you for that, because sometimes these committees and the personalities gel, and sometimes they gel even better. And I think you guys are gelling even better. And I just want to say thank you for that. It's really been great the last couple of years. So here are a couple of thoughts. You know, we talk about the artist receptions, and they have been fabulous. There was a seed planted about, is there an opportunity through a process that you select whereby the city might acquire one piece from each artist to start building a public collection? So I throw that out there as part of whatever funding request or budget you start thinking through during the process of having your retreat. So you might think about that. Along that line, you know, years ago, we talked about in the Colonial Plaza, eventually creating opportunity for plinths that the city would create, you know, concrete or whatever you call them, similar to what you might see down at Point Ruston, where you would have an artist opportunity, a call for artist projects, and they would be displayed for the public, you know, sculpture or whatever on these plinths. And then there might be a vote and a selection, and maybe again, a piece acquired as part of the city's permanent collection over time. And you build it over time, it becomes a sculpture garden. And you know, just a thought out there. Yeah. The art events you're having here, I wonder if there's an opportunity to do a thank you event for all of those artists, both the ones who exhibit and the ones who do the beautiful box wraps, including the students, at maybe a gala or some sort of a thank you event at Lakewood Gardens, whereby they all come together. Yeah.
That would be great. We'd love to do that.
Yeah, and then we have, you know, business leaders come, the council come, you know, that way they're all together, they can share and experience that together. And then there may be an opportunity to start raising funds for public art at an event like that, because there's a need, right? On the mural in the town center. So what will be coming through your organization, the Lakewood Playhouse, through LTAC, council hasn't heard of this yet, but there is an opportunity for marketing and promotion. It's a little bit of a term of art, to utilize the front face of the Lakewood Playhouse for a mural done by Jeremy Gregory, who helped Angelina, because he's incredibly well known and actually was a mentor of hers. I think Lakewood Garden is going, Lakewood Playhouse is going to be doing that. And so there were funds that, subject to council's approval, that are in their marketing and promotion budget, because it's a forward-facing advertisement for the new branding of the Lakewood Playhouse. So hopefully that will come forward and get approved, but there's something in the works for that potentially. So plant that seed on that. And then finally, the log. I don't know if you've heard about the log, but the massive tree trunk at the old Lakewood Library is going to be brought at some point under some sort of storage bailment, if you will, of, yeah, is 10 tons. Yeah. So Earl might be able to pick it up. But I think we were going to power this down to the Arts Commission to give some thoughts about what might be the best way to utilize that beautiful piece of history in a public way. Maybe it's in the urban park that we're working to create, maybe it's somewhere else. But some thoughts to think about on that because it's a gem and important to the community. So anyway, those are my thoughts and comments. Yes, sir, Mr. Boki. Landmark and Heritage. We had their committee report a week or so ago, and they're talking a lot about, enhancing public spaces with depictions and representations of history. And as you may remember, one of the things that came out of the artist call for projects was a really cool bronze with the piece of the Speedway. That was a beautiful piece. And so there may be an opportunity, in your next public art piece to do something that ties into Landmarks and Heritage and their quest to bring a piece of history to Lakewood. And the other thing that might be interesting, again, just throwing it out there, is we've had a couple of really good, large, the two public art pieces we've done have been very impressionistic. There may be some desire to do something that's a little bit more realistic, and that piece, as you recall, was very definitive as to a piece of Lakewood history. So anyway, I throw that out there, but that was something that came out of Landmarks. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I just noted on that what we learned is that if you look around us, you're looking at pieces of the Speedway behind us. The wood is reclaimed wood from the wooden Speedway. Yeah, and so we're in a historic and artistic spot at the same time. I'm a little more frugal than the mayor is. So before we get to statuary, the wraps are such a success and the murals are such a success. We should, I think, push on getting the things that are visible to the community that are affordable, because Mr. Raschke back there knows when your budget was zero. He's been around for a long time. Maybe there are other opportunities in Visalia, California. They decorate the fire hydrants. Yeah. And they're like 50 pieces. They have the same kind of competition and selection process which we do for the murals, and they turn them into, Fire Dog's the easy one, but they had all sorts of things that you wouldn't think of. So it would give us an opportunity to enhance the reputation of Lakewood as a place where, we know, we have the signs when we come in, but we know when we go to Lakewood that it's different because there are wraps everywhere and there are murals everywhere. There are fire hydrants that are decorated and there are whatever else you could get, whimsical art on the corner when we have enough money to do the statuary. It would give us a greater sense of place if we could get that visible kind of bulk art out there. So.
Absolutely. So as you can tell, we're all bullish on art. We love what you're doing. Yeah. We just want more and more. We just got to figure out a way to fund it. And that goes to the nature of maybe doing some event to raise private funds because the public funds are limited, right? So yes.
Along the lines of all your great ideas, would you like to join the Arts Commission?
I've been there, done that.
Again.
We are in a sense kind of on the Arts Commission because we receive your recommendations and help fund them.
It's
So
true.
we're all part of your mission.
Speaking of funding, I have a question,
Sure.
or we have a question. We've been talking about Motor Avenue
Mhm.
and the possibility of transforming that into an art cultural area.
Yeah.
And we're wondering could this possibly be part of the economic development plan? Because in other communities that have these art centers, it brings in a lot of tourists and they're spending money outside of, just regular things, but they're bringing more revenue into the city. It would be really great even if we could just start off by renting a few spaces
Mhm.
on Motor Avenue.
So you're talking about an art center like interior spaces for artists to do things?
Yes, yes, for enrichment and for display, for like gallery.
Mhm.
And maybe even, I don't know if there's grants possible to, because wherever there's art galleries, there's usually food, like a cafe or something, because people want to go and look at art, but they also want to grab a cup of coffee and maybe discuss what they've seen or, you know, think about making purchases. And is that something that maybe we could address?
Two things come to mind, and I can only speak for me. I'll let the council weigh in. Number one, we do have this wonderful thing called the Lakewood Historical Society that has a space there. Now, there may be an opportunity to have some art integrated over there, space dependent, right, Phil? To do something like that periodically, kind of like you do with this space here, where you have rotating art. Second thing is, and this would be something we could maybe check with our economic development manager. As you know, the city doesn't own the building. We have the right of way, which has become Motor Avenue or Colonial Plaza, whatever we're going to name it. That'll be our next discussion point. There could be an opportunity where the landlord might be approached to say, hey, until you fill an empty space or 2 or 3 or 7 that you have, might there be an opportunity to have, it's like Spaceworks downtown Tacoma, where we could have at a low rent, whoever's going to be doing it, and space for artists to utilize it until a tenant comes into play. That might be a win-win because it's filled space for the landlord. It emphasizes and provides opportunities for artists, and it's great for the community. So it's something I can ask about through the commercial broker. It's something maybe our economic development manager could reach out and ask about too. I can't commit that yet, but I'll talk to the city manager, but great idea.
That would be great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Emily?
I think Susan was going to comment on our cultural access fund.
Great.
Well, in that context, just the Pierce County Arts and Culture Coalition will be hosting a reception at Lake Walter for elected officials, October 12th. If you haven't received your invitation, I hope that you will come. And in the context of that wonderful organization, we learn a lot about the Cultural Access Fund and how it's transformed the museums and large nonprofits in Tacoma and the community as a whole, particularly students attending the K-12 system. We also know that Olympia has passed it and Gig Harbor is on its way. And I will just leave it at that.
So if Brianna can get that on our calendar, that would be great. Number one, it'd be great to go. And then in terms of being on the commission, I'd be happy to come to the retreat or part of it if that would be helpful. But as to the Cultural Access Fund, wasn't that part of state law that was passed this last legislative session to provide some funding?
It was passed some years ago now, and initially it was a county initiative, and then it was changed to allow municipalities to vote on it. And Tacoma has had it now for 5 years. And during that process, I've watched the transformation of the community and students so that now every student from K through 12 has a transformative experience in one of the big cultural nonprofits. And it is life-changing. And seeing Olympia pass it and now Gig Harbor well on its way, I hope that maybe we might be able to have a conversation about it and with our other nonprofits.
Great. Sylvia, anything else?
I'm not good. Emily.
No, we really appreciate your questions and your comments and the feedback that you're receiving. So we really appreciate that. I think the final thing was just to ask you, thinking about, all of the work and events that we've done this year. Are there any recommendations from council are there directions that we need to take? Are we on the right track? Just that general question for you.
I gave you some significant ones from my humble perspective, so that could give you plenty to work on for a while, but I'm not the only game in town here. Anyone else have any comments or questions, suggestions? Mr. Larcella?
Just keep doing what you're doing. It's a lot to be proud of. We've accomplished a lot this year and it makes me proud to be a resident of Lakewood. So thank you.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Just again, thank you for all you're doing. It's great energy. Keep it up, bottle it if you can, and continue to use it. So appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you bet. Good seeing you. Yeah, Phil.
Just one thing, that crosscut section that was in front of the Tinsler Museum, the front of the.
The log?
dumpster, that is 586 years old. I mean, it's a legend in itself.
It is.
Is that today or when it's cut down? Is that when it's cut down?
The one we cut down.
No, what was it the age when it was?
No,
cut
it was,
down?
yes, it's 586 today.
Yeah, very good.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No problem. Thanks, Bill. Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute stretch break before the next presentation?
You're not supporting domestic. I'm just supporting the words.
Oh.
You might want.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are back after a brief recess. Now we are on to the second item for discussion, that being the review of the naming process for blank. No,
Blank.
naming process for Motor Avenue
Mhm.
or the Colonial Plaza or Ms. Dodsworth, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor Whalen and City Council for inviting me to come back and continue this conversation. We've discussed this area a few times and council has made changes to the resolution that supports naming or renaming a city resource. And so just as a little background, you know, the city since incorporation has been trying to define itself as a city. It's, you know, we talked just recently tonight with the Arts Commission, and they've done a lot to really make statements around the community and support engaging the entire community. We've been working since cityhood to become, you know, to have a downtown core area. And so that's led to the downtown business plan. It led to some revitalization of Motor Avenue. And for those that might not remember, or just as a history, is that the project itself was called, you know, the Motor Avenue Complete Street Project. But because of the funding source, it was confusing the funders because it wasn't a transportation project, but it had Motor Ave in the name. And so that's when it was, you know, identified as Colonial Plaza Project. And so throughout the development of that Complete Street Project, it was referred to as Colonial Plaza. And so we built it and we celebrated it and named it. No, we didn't really name it, but just referred to it. And then we were going to do all these great things down there to help revitalize that area, which was kind of a little dead zone, and to try and redevelop that area. Then a little thing called COVID happened. So we really kind of just didn't do much there and came back in 2021 and started hosting events to sort of bring people down to the center of the community, hoping to help revitalize that area. Council back in October and then again in February of 2023, we kind of started talking about that the area was being called lots of different things. And we kind of wanted to settle on something so that we could refer to the location when we did events and activities and just to sort of identify it. And so lots of different people were calling it different things. So when we first started return to this conversation, we brought back the naming, the ordinance that you had passed in 2022. And it was really great that it was laid out because it reminded us, what are some things we should consider before we name something or rename something? And so one of the things that council said is that we should be very deliberate. We should, you know, think about why are we naming it? Why are we naming it something, or why are we changing the name of something? And then what are some of the criteria or justification that we might want to use to follow that? Are we naming it or changing the name because something's changed there, like a big building's been built, or we created a brand new facility that we wanted to honor an individual? Is the name just the name of it, like Share, or is it the name of it as in the Amazon Plaza, because maybe we're building a big facility there? So just, you know, why does the location need a name, or why does the space or a building need to be identified in a certain way? So then just also recognizing whatever we come up with, whether we name something, rename something, change something, that then what are all the things that we need to do from impact to local businesses or residents, if it was, say, the name of a street that was changed, or if it was an identification that we needed to look at signage or wayfinding signage, or just how you let people know, hey, we've renamed this place. So those are things that we talked about. And again, council was real specific on that. We need to be deliberate so that it's not just something that happens because according to your resolution, it should stick around for a while. So at our last meeting, we had a lot of discussion and council said that you really wanted more feedback from the community. So you as a group came together with 3 options that could be considered, and then thought, well, if you've got a better idea, let us know. So we did the survey. We gave it to our illustrious communications team, and they put it out through lots of different means, through social media, on the website, city manager reports and bullets. I know I mentioned it probably in some of the many presentations that I make throughout the community, and the city manager's done a lot of the state of the city presentations. It was probably mentioned there. But we also did surveys. We did surveys at the farmer's market. We did surveys at the festivals because people really were there and didn't know where they were. So we did the surveys right there. And then also did it at Summerfest. So we gave individuals lots of opportunity to participate. As you can see by the staff report, you know, we had 687, almost 700 people responded. That's pretty good response for one of our surveys. And you can see what the results were. Colonial Plaza was the fan favorite that came out about because I think it's been referred to. It's that area. Could have been folks that have been here for a while, but anyway, that was the fan favorite. And then what we did was anything that had 5 or more, and we consolidated a few that were very similar. These were the sort of the write-in suggestions. There were a lot of really interesting comments. Most of them were, you know, realistic. Some were kind of silly, but what we did was you could see kind of combine things like Lakewood Plaza or Lakewood Community Plaza, Colonial Plaza, Colonial Promenade, Colonial Terrace, Town Center Square, Town Center Plaza. Those, if they were similar, we kind of grouped them together and you can see collectively what those numbers were. But this is sort of what the response was from the community based on the work that we did. We spent about 6 months doing it, promoting it, and got the information for you. And so that's the response. That's what you asked us to do. And so we're bringing this information back to you. And then regarding next steps, love to have conversation from council regarding the process or regarding the, you know, have things changed. But there's kind of 3 next steps if council's interested. One is you could decide, oh, we love this. We could make a decision and we could take action at a future council meeting because you have the responsibility and the right to do that. The next thing you could do is say, well, maybe we're still just not sure what we want to call it, or if we want to temporarily call it something, because maybe there's some changes. Tonight, you talked about an art center. We've talked about a downtown park. We've talked about the old QFC and what's going to happen with that building. Is that going to be created into such a fashion that it's going to maybe be a theme for the area, or it could be something. I mean, we're not going to call it the old QFC Plaza, but I'm not sure what that's going to end up being, but it could be something. And maybe you want to wait and decide that you want to maybe see how that area is developed so that it becomes a new branded area for the city. Or you could, you know, tell city manager to direct staff, or you could direct the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as they work for you, that you want them to do something else in order to gather more information or consider more names or come up with some other great idea. So that's all I have for you tonight. And happy to answer your questions or take notes or listen to next steps.
Great. I'll open it up for feedback or questions. Mr. Anderson, anything?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable going forward with the Colonial Plaza. It was overwhelmingly noted by the people answering the survey. Efforts go 500 different directions from that. I think ignore the fact that this is a place. It's a place. Places have names so that people can find them, refer to them. It's been the Colonial Center for 70 years. That's what anybody who's been here for any period of time knows it as. It's named after an architectural style. We were never a colony. We were never here as a colonial power. Been in the Philippines, maybe. Want to drive the different colonists out, and it would be more sensitive. But here's an architectural style, and it's a place that people know, and we want to be able to find it. And if you named it most of these other things, it would not help people find it. I think we should move forward with that. If you add a couple of the Colonial Center Plaza Promenade, from the 7 responses, you actually get up to 50% of the people surveyed pick one out of a dozen as their choice.
Very good. Anybody else? Thoughts, Mr. Lorcella?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I would want to go with what 50% of our surveyed population went with. I don't see any reason to go against what the general public said.
Just, I would like to say it was not my first choice. But I had the same, I was tying something to theater, which was hugely unpopular. Because it's a place and people know where the old theater is. And so it was, if we wanted to change it, I thought it should go to be the Theater Squares, Theater Plaza or something. And that obviously isn't a winner. What were you wanting?
Something like Theater Plaza or Theater Square. If we had an active theater there, it would make. great
I think
sense.
at the last council meeting, the confusion was there's a Lakewood Theater, there's a Lakewood Town Center Theater, and there's a Lakewood Playhouse Theater. And so
Mhm.
with this not even being an active theater, it could cause some confusion. Unless it was the new rebrand, then certainly council decision, but didn't make it the final three.
Any other thoughts or comments? Deputy Mayor Moss?
I've only known it as the Colonial Plaza. So that's definitely my choice.
And that is some historical perspective. Yes, of love and respect, historical perspective. I'm certainly fine with that because I think it's been that for decades. Colonial Plaza, even the sign that's on page whatever of our packet shows it clearly, the Lakewood Colonial Center. Now we have a plaza, so Colonial Plaza makes some sense for the passersby. It also ties into the fact that we actually had a sub-area plan that called it the Colonial District. And we required certain design standards that had a little bit of the colonial theme to it. Again, it's an architectural theme, correct? So I think it makes sense and certainly it honors the respondents, the majority of the respondents to the survey. So I don't think we need to spend a whole lot more time on it. Mr. Boki.
Well, I'm going to ask a series of questions. So historically, what part is the Colonial Center? The whole, all three blocks? Because there's. So calling it a colonial district like we have, I guess.
Again, a good question for Mary.
Okay. For both
Not Mary,
Marys.
I think it's talking about.
Seriously, I mean, is the whole thing colonial?
It's the low-rise brick buildings and the theater for the Clap development. That was the shopping area.
Okay,
That was the Colonial Center,
okay. So
both sides of the road.
both sides of the road.
Well, three.
Kitty corner, yeah. Okay, and where the QFC used to be. It was called that because of the design, not because of the imperial ambitions of the people who built it. Is that Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, well, they
I think
may
that's
have
why
it
you're
for
here
all the
tonight.
Timberland, but they borrowed New England architecture.
Okay.
as a theme.
Okay.
And I think that, I'm not sure, but the little house on the prairie the little church on the prairie may even have been part of it. It was a grocery store. Yeah.
We can find that out for you.
I don't need to know. I just want to know that the reason we're here talking about this tonight is I believe that there was an objection to the name colonial, meaning colonial power, meaning this. Instead of an architectural style. That's why this is here tonight. Otherwise, I don't know that we'd ever brought it up. But clearly the general public doesn't think this is a problem. So I'll leave it at that.
The irony is that the revolutionary American colonists were the ones that started the rebellion against the colonial power of Great Britain, that it's spread throughout the world and lasted for the next century and a half.
There was a comment made at the unveiling of the sculpture about the being called colonial as well. I think that's what he was referring to.
And certainly we've received comments from well-meaning folks in the community that they think that that has a negative connotation. For sure. Yep.
So we won't put up a picture of Teddy Roosevelt or a statue of Teddy Roosevelt storming up San Juan Hill or anything like that. Can we agree on that?
I don't think we have anything akin to the Rough Riders in the Colonial Plaza at this stage, so.
I think we've solved that problem.
Well, and at least you can save some money on banners because we have several that
We
have
do.
Colonial Plaza on it, so it's it'll save some cash.
Just as a thought, if we are looking at the old Colonial Center and what it's going to bring in there, would we be wise to see what that entails to give it a name? The old QFC building, whatever comes in there, if it brings something in particular that we would like to see that be called or whatever, would that,
You can go either way.
yeah.
Certainly look at that. We've all been to communities that have redeveloped areas that have a really cool trending name. I'm thinking of Nashville, they have Printers Alley, which is really a fun area. It's very vibrant and artsy, and it has a lot of, fun bars and restaurants, and people know that area. But again, it's called that because historically it had some a kinship to printers or, publication stuff. And so that was Printers Alley. That's similar to kind of what we're doing here. So there's lots of neat little vignettes around the country that have locational names that are harken back to something in history. Any other comments or questions? You want to bring it back or we can table it. We don't have to jump either, but we've got a survey and we've got feedback, and I think what we're trying to do is avoid cumbersome branding in the future, because we've got events going on and we don't want to say, well, it's the space soon to be named. You know where it is. And that's tough to put on a banner. Yep, sounds like we're ready to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think we took in the concerns of the people who had concerns about the name, and the public was brought in on the decision, and I think that they've spoken on that, and clearly they didn't share the concerns that some folks did, so I'd leave it at that.
Very
Just
good.
As a clarification, so are you do you want to then take action and formally do that?
Yes.
Or just consensus that we know that's what we're going to start calling it?
I think we should take action
Okay,
and do it.
we'll bring that back. I'll work with city
That
manager.
puts a sense of finality to it, so we're done with it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, Ms. Spear will give us the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Review update. And as I understand it from the reading, it's focused on housing. Ms. Spear.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be up here this evening just because I'm going to be accessing the internet to show you the equity map live. So bear with me, please. So to begin with, just to remind you where we're at in this process, we are actually about a year into the preparation for next year's periodic review and updates to the comprehensive plan and development regulations that are related to it. And in particular, tonight, we're going to be talking a little more about housing. Again, there's a major focus in this effort because of state law that's changed even in the middle of the update process related to housing, and then also unveiling for you the new and live equity index map for the city of Lakewood. So if you'll recall, There is a House Bill numbered 1110 that was passed this spring that said if you are in an urban area, including all cities, and for us, it's the cities between 25 and 75,000 population, there is a base density now on regular or on lots that were traditionally single family detached of at least 2 units per lot. But if you are near a transit stop within a quarter mile, then it would go up to 4 units per lot. And then if you're not within that quarter mile, but some of the additional units are considered affordable, then that would also be 4 units per lot. So that's a significant change, obviously, to the past ideas under growth management, where the city has the autonomy to decide its land use and its housing densities. But this was passed this spring and it goes into effect basically right now. We're incorporating it into the 24 update. There is an alternate path to take under 1110, which is the text below, that talks about splitting rather than having it apply citywide, either 2 to 4 units per lot. You can also just say we're going to apply this to 75% of the city if certain criteria are met. The 25% that it would not include would be where there are issues of displacement risk and or infrastructure capacity, looking at critical areas, and then also areas subject to sea level rise, flooding, wildfires, geologic hazard areas over the next 100 years. So that is a very high level analysis of this, but it is something that the city continues to examine which one of these to ultimately recommend for your consideration next spring. The other thing that needs to be in.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Sure.
Again, just to educate me on the impact of 1110. So if there's a 10,000 square foot lot that doesn't have all those risks, if it comes through the planning department now, are we telling folks, I'm sorry, you can't apply to have one single family home on that 10,000 square foot lot? You really need to plan for 2. You know, what is the response these days on?
Well, right now, the response is you follow the code as it stands, because this doesn't go into effect until at least the end of 2024, when council takes action on the comp plan update. Once it's in place, it needs to be, you need to be planning for at least 2 units per lot. And so that may well affect where they can place their single family detached lot if it's a barren site or a redeveloped site. Yeah, because the idea here is you are purposefully densifying areas that in the past have been single family.
So bare lots, post 2024, they come in, it's like, oh, thanks for your one single family residential dwelling plan, but we need to see 2.
And not that you have to build it right away, but that there needs to be room for it someday. Yeah.
Got it. And so that is going to impact the configuration of the site plan, I should say.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, or that, I'd like to see the statutory language that makes it a requirement with respect to the permitting as opposed to zoning.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because one step is the legislature saying,
Zoning.
you must zone for this and allow this. Another one is for the city to say, you've got to do this. That seems like I'd like to see that statutory language so I know what we have to do and what we can do, which are 2 different things.
Certainly. Yep.
Thanks. Yeah.
The other,
Mr. Boki, hold on there.
sorry.
So
Great questions.
when you say you have to plan for 2 lots, does that mean you also have to pay for the infrastructure for 2 lots? I mean, do you already have to? If you brought the sewer, we don't have many lots where we're building de novo, but would you have to plan for 2 sewer hookups and put that in, or?
It's not necessarily putting it in, but when the time comes, there has to be the room on the lot for the development to occur. And there needs to be, excuse me, the planning, in our case with Pierce County Sewer Utility, to make sure they understand the potential need for additional capacity in an area where they thought they may have had enough. They may now need to be looking at doubling potential capacity there. So the county doing its unified sewer plan right now is going to have to change its calculations significantly, given the number of jurisdictions involved, to understand when they're replacing trunks and mains in their unified sewer planning long range, they're going to have to assume some additional density beyond what they thought.
And who's under cities over how many thousands?
25,000 and above.
So it'd be us, University Place.
Puyallup,
Tacoma
Tacoma for sure. Yeah.
Tacoma.
Urban unincorporated county. Yeah. Yeah.
And Bonnie Light.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. So this is just another piece to the alternative where you say 75% of the city versus all of it would apply. These are the areas where you have historically racially discriminatory lots. Some of this was the Clapp family, which is why it's kind of clustered around downtown area. But these are the areas and the parcels where there were in the past things that said, you know, only white people can live here unless you are the chauffeur or the maid, you know, that sort of thing. Obviously, that doesn't apply anymore, but that's where they are in the city. So if we were to go down this alternative path, all of these areas of the city would have to be part of 4 units per acre, or sorry, 4 units per lot,
The light colored or the white?
where the red dots are.
Red dots. Okay.
Yep.
So I'd like to. That's based on a historic non-enforceable provision. Is there anything based on, it shouldn't it be based on the actual demographics of the area?
All I can tell you, council members, this is the language straight out of the bill.
It said historically,
House Bill 1110 says areas that have had this on their lots, that must be included in the now higher units per lot. So this is a really crude graphic, but there's been a lot of questions in trying to puzzle, what does it mean to have 2 or more ADUs on a lot that's traditionally been single family? So again, please take this with a large grain of salt. This is Tiffany's attempt at using shapes. But what you have here is the idea of one could be an attached ADU and one could be detached. Both could be attached, and you could also have 2 detached. The sizes here don't mean anything because you could have a smaller house with either the same size or potentially, if you have a really small house, your ADU could actually be larger if the original house was under 1,000 square feet. But the idea here is that these combinations are things that the Bill 1337 requires to be allowed. So it's intended to provide options for the property owners to either do attached or detached combinations, as you see. So this map, I believe you were shown a little while ago, but this is one looking just at where the 2 units per lot versus the 4 units per lot would apply in Lakewood. On the western side of the city, you see that goldenrod color. Those are all of the residential lots where 2 units per lot would apply, except for where you see the darker pink and the hatch marks, and then also the blue hatch marks. That's where you have critical areas that would exempt those lots from this applying. So it's not a citywide result. It is something that does affect quite a bit of the west side of the city. And then if you see, oh, good. So right here, this kind of U shape where my cursor is going, that is the area that is within the 1/4 mile of the identified major transit stops in Lakewood. And so you see this darker orange spot on some of the parcels. Those are the areas where it would be 4 units per lot because they are within that 1/4 mile of the major transit stops. And the major transit stops, if you'll recall when we talked about this earlier, yes, it's the existing Sounder Transit Station, but it's also the planned Tillicum Station, and it's also the planned BRT route through Lakewood. So both of those things are obviously not done. And in terms of the Tillicum Station, that at this point isn't scheduled for completion until 2045 or 46, which is actually after the 20-year planning horizon. But as state law reads right now, we are supposed to be planning and assuming that they are constructed and that the density under this bill applies like you see here. Oops, excuse me. So this is a new and improved map, a little more updated, a little more colorful. What you see here now is some of the same information, but a little bit more. The blue are the areas where both 1110, which is the 2 or 4 units per lot, as well as the 1337, which is the at least 2 ADUs, accessory dwelling units per lot, would apply without restriction. So the blue, again, mostly on the west side of the city. Within the hatch mark is that same U shape that I was showing on the last slide. In here is where you would potentially have 4 units per lot, because you're closer to the major transit stops. And then there's actually the spot down in Tillicum because of that anticipated station there. What you see in gold or a pale yellow, if you will, up near Oak Brook, down by one of the lakes, and there's some areas over in Western Lakewood as well. These are areas where we're not sure it's potentially affected, meaning there may be covenants and restrictions that actually would control here, that rather than talking about, you know, the racial stuff of the past, which don't apply, they may have governing CCNRs that would say only so much density per acre. And that has been allowed by the state legislature to apply. So you may end up with, for instance, Oak Brook not having 1110 or 1337 affect them as a result. The last set of lots that are covered are this lighter pink area, and there's not very much of it, but it's around. Those are areas where they are either the lots are so small or they're already so full of critical areas and or structures that this would not apply. The last thing you'll see on this map are kind of the green dots, and that is where we have our oak presence or oak canopy now documented. Sorry. And that, if you'll remember in our critical areas regulations, if you have a stand of Gary oaks, that is considered a critical area. It's critical habitat. So again, there's critical areas like lakes or wetlands, but there's also in Lakewood the critical areas that are the trees. And so those also take out areas that this would otherwise apply to. So what we had was a state legislature saying, we're going to require this of local government because this is going to result in X number of additional housing units being built without having to expand an urban growth area or rezone everywhere. We're just going to take the residential areas and upzone them essentially. It's not going to give them the total number that they thought. This is just Lakewood's example, but I'll guarantee you that other jurisdictions are doing this analysis and they will have results that also show it won't necessarily apply citywide. But as it stands, this is our first blush at looking where these changes would apply within the city. So it's mostly R3 areas within the western side. And then you'll also see it'll have to ultimately be case by case and lot by lot analysis, but around that U shape is the assumed higher densities of ADUs because you're closer to the transit station and the higher number of units per lot. So any other questions on that map? Okay. This you've seen before. This shows where the risk of displacement is in the city because of economic or social vulnerability. And surprise, surprise, it's where some of those things we were just looking at apply. So for instance, Lakeview is right here, and that's the higher density, right, per lot. You go down here, and that is a high displacement risk. And you see some of the same things up here in the north and eastern part of the city. So this is going to be an issue that the council and the planning commission will have to grapple with, the competing policies, if you will, of trying to prevent displacement of those that are most vulnerable. And on the other hand, increased density as has been laid out by the state legislature this past session.
So educate us a little bit, Ms. Spear, on the PSRC displacement index. So how is that defined and what are we looking at to help us understand why those populations are at risk or most risk of displacement, when one would think counterintuitively that the more supply, potentially the lesser price with enhanced housing in those areas?
Because what we're talking about in terms of displacement are current residents. And so when you start talking about an area as ripe for redevelopment, current residents may well get bought out. Landlords move people out, rebuild, redevelop. And so it's the people that are there right now versus what kind of economic and housing development may occur. This right here, I don't think we need to go over in too much detail, and it's dots, which are very hard to read, but this is the distribution of population by race within the city. And essentially what you see, again, down here in Springbrook, in Lakeview, up here in Monte Vista, the Air Corridor 1 and 2 areas, you'll see there's color other than the light lime green, and that it means more racial diversity. Same down in Tillicum and Woodbrook, as opposed to some of these other areas in other parts of the city, which are a little less diverse. But these are also the areas that are the high displacement risk that we just saw in the last slide.
So where do they get that data? Is
I'm
this
sorry?
census- Is this census data pretty much?
This came from census data, yes.
Okay. Okay.
The other thing that we in Lakewood are going to be dealing with, which is I think somewhat unique, is the fact that Air Corridor 1 and 2, there is planned displacement, right? Because that is the area that's already zone non-conforming for residential uses in there due to safety issues. And so that is going to result in 389 parcels are affected by this idea that someday, it's certainly not going to be by 2024, it may well not be, by 2044. But the people that live in this area, the idea is that eventually they are not there anymore, and quote, safer uses, meaning lower number of people per acre are in these parts of the city because of McCord Field operations and flight patterns. So it's just one more layer for Lakewood to be remembering that not only is there requirements about protecting those that are being displaced, this is a caveat because of the presence of Joint Base Lewis McCord. So I'm going to go now to just another new tool that we have as part of the city's 24 comprehensive plan process. It's something that we've been talking about with you for a few months, and now it is live, I'm happy to say. So I will open this up just one moment. All right, so this is the Lakewood's Equity Index map, and this is live now, and it will be shared on our city website starting tomorrow. But what this shows is, with a variety of different categories and criteria, it breaks down. This is actually the composite. This is just the equity score overall, but it breaks down into a number of different subcategories, information about the city's population, and it is broken out by census tract. So if you were to actually hover your cursor over any one of these, you can see the equity index for that specific census tract or part of the city. So again, this is the equity map, and this is the equity data over here. So if you want to start to see why you're getting these scores of very high to very low, these are some of the reasons why in here. One thing that I would point your attention to as well is this about. For anyone who wants to ever use this map, this is where you will see the guidance manual on how to use it. So please feel free to go to that and download that, or take a look at it online before you start to navigate through these different choices.
So go through one of those and educate us. Go
Sure.
to Lake Steilacoom, for instance, that brown section there. So
Right here?
Yeah. Tell us
So
about that.
this is showing you that for this census block group, the equity index is very high. And if we were to go over here to the map options, you can go to equity and you can choose a group. And it will start to break down for you the data that you see on the right. So population, individuals with disabilities, foreign-born, limited English, race and ethnicity, age and gender. You are able to go down to the census tract level to find that information out.
Go ahead. Okay, what are the components and who developed the formula?
This was put together for the city by Community Attributes, which is the same one that did it for Pierce County and Tacoma. And what they did is go through 2020 census and American Community Survey information, as well as Esri, and I think there's one other data source.
But what are the components in the weighting? Do we have that?
Of the, I'm sorry?
We have the components and the weighting, because some of this seems counterintuitive.
You mean how many, what was the number in order to get to a very high, very low score?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the components that are considered, and how are they weighted to
Yeah.
come up with the final score?
I can provide that to the council tomorrow. It's broken out in writing. Part of it is in the guidance manual.
You know, is is Woodbrook, for example, very low because it's a low income area?
That would be part of the calculation, right? But if you were to look at, instead of looking at the full equity map and go to a different one, you would see some different results based on the criteria applicable in a particular area. So give it a second to load and I'll try to demonstrate that. This is also available as a hard copy in our in PowerPoint if you'd rather do that rather than wait for this to happen.
And are there some national standards or statutory guidance that these consultants use in developing this index, or do they get to pick what they think is important?
They're using the same criteria that you would see the state agencies be using or the PSRC be using. I can check and see if there's anything in statute that talks about this.
What was their, well, my question is, what was their guidance? Because I always go back to my favorite chapter of tutoring statistics in college. It's how to lie with statistics. And it boils down to the person who chooses the denominator wins. You objectively measure the numerator, but you pick the denominator and the formula, and you can make it say anything you want. And the map doesn't seem to match my impression of neighborhoods in Lakewood.
Let me get to the printouts because it looks like the map's just not going to load for us tonight, unfortunately. So this is the information, again, that's the composite of all the scores. If you were to jump to accessibility, you would see slightly different patterns in terms of high and low index. So for instance, from equity, if you were to look at kind of the right of the center of the city here and over to the east a little bit, those are at the lower end of the equity index. But if you go to accessibility, they are now very high, in part because they're right along Bridgeport Way and on the way out to 512. So you've got information that goes into each one of these categories that results in slightly different results depending on which set of criteria you're looking at. And again, here we are with livability. So median income, cost burden households, self-rated health, and some others as well. When you look at education, some of the patterns are slightly different in different parts of the city than you saw with livability, for instance. See some changes down in South Central South Central section of the city. And then economy. So this is looking at jobs and unemployment rate, home ownership rate, household income, poverty rates. And here you'll look at the environmental. So this is looking at roadways, the tree canopy, emissions and heat island information, and ozone concentration. So all of these different colored maps are taken in concert to create this equity index that you saw at the start. And I will get the information to you for the criteria for each one of these tomorrow. So this is, I said, is available for the general public as well as the city to access. It's going to be part of the process to do the 2024 comprehensive plan periodic review, but it's going to outlast that. It's going to be something that's available to the city over time to continue to track and see if there's changes over time and or use it as a source for figuring out what policies and priorities the city may wish to set. So with that, any questions other than what's already been voiced?
Questions overall?
Sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how the housing thing may change the equity index as you get more density, right? One would presume it makes it better. Does that mean increases it or lessens it, right?
I think if you were to be in the state legislature and those that passed 1110 and 1337 this year, what they hope for is that the disparity that you see between the dark color and the light color goes away and there's less and less of a distinction from place to place in the city. And you end up with a more variety of incomes and everything else throughout the whole city.
So we're hoping for taupe. We're gonna be taupe.
However you want to define it, but the idea is to spread diversity throughout the city.
Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm just going to speak bluntly. Basically what 1110 and to some extent 1337 is going to do is going to drive gentrification here in Lakewood. It's going to roll back the public policies that you have put in place to try and protect and preserve existing housing stock, particularly for lower and lower income families and individuals. So that's my perspective on that.
Because you believe that the lower income places are more likely to see the enhanced development?
Yes, Mayor, because a developer is going to come in and I'm just going to use a simple math exercise. They're going to come into a neighborhood and they're going to buy 2 average single family residential lots. And let's just assume they're $400,000 each. So that's $800,000. They're then going to come in and they're going to build at least 4, or they could build upwards of 8. And what are those going to sell at? What's the current market for those properties right now? $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. That's a fact. And that's gentrification. But then what happens to those individuals that had previously owned those properties or had rented those properties? Where do they go? I can't get an answer from the state legislature on that.
Yeah, a couple of things that that's one of the things that I've found to be counter to the goals of this is that same thing's going to happen with the lower income multifamily. It's going to be redeveloped into much higher rents because it's driven by a demand for density, and that's where you can find the most density. The other is an example you gave, increased sewer capacity. Increased sewer capacity is a need for it is a driver for increased hookup and capacity charges by the county, which are some of the highest charges in development right now. So it's based on a unit. And so when those charges go up, it's going to drive the cost of housing up even more. So it's going to have a negative effect. I have two concerns about this that I think we need to clarify a bit, the process as a whole. One is there are provisions in the bill that provide in some cases for the elimination of off-street parking in certain circumstances. That can't work here. If it's within a half mile of a transit station and they define that, but we don't have effective mass transit and it's not going to be here in the foreseeable future. So that is going to create a mess. And so are there any outs for us to try to avoid that? I mean, an example of, we know a little bit better, but the for acres site redevelopment with that nicer apartment complex created a huge parking problem, not because there weren't off-street parking places, there were, it's because not calculated into the formula is the fact that if you have a 3-bedroom apartment right outside a base, you're going to get 3 single soldiers or airmen there, and they're each going to have a car. And they can't get to work with transit. So we've got to figure out some solution to mitigate that problem. And I'm concerned that before we go too far down the road of planning for making people design around 2 or 4 units, that we dissect the statute. I pulled it up. Section 3 is an example. It said, as exceptions, it said, must provide by ordinance and incorporate into its development regulations and zoning regulations authorization for the following: the development of at least 2 units per lot on all lots zoned predominantly for residential use. It said must provide authorization for them, not require that you build a duplex or 2 units. That's an important distinction. And I believe that it's contrary to personal property rights to tell somebody that they must build in a way. You don't have the choice. You don't have the choice of driving the car you want. You don't have the choice of eating the food you want. You don't have the choice of this or that. This is just another one where they're saying you don't have the choice of building a house where you want it on your lot, where you already have to sandwich it in between the oak trees. Because you have to leave space for this hypothetical second unit. If there's any way we can avoid that, I think we should.
Yep. Mr. Warsaw? Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on what Councilmember Anderson said about requesting the criteria on the indices, I'd also like to see the source data. Just as an engineer, I want to dig into it and really understand what it says.
The source data for the equity index map?
Yes.
Okay.
And then are we looking at forecasting what the future equity index map could look like as we incorporate things that we're talking about?
No, this is as is. This is not forecasting. That's not the way the tool's designed. The closest we can get to that, at least right now within the city planning process, is when we go through the future land use map to say someday this is the max that could be on this lot. It may not be there now, but this is what could be.
It'd be good to, if we can, try to anticipate what the impacts will be and what that future equity index map could be.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Great overview. I assume part of this will be the presentation at the coffee house. coming
Yes, it
up
will.
Thursday. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'll be great. Are we gonna have the big board out there this time? The smart board or whatever was used, so we can put it up front for people to see? We want to make sure you got the electronic.
Give it a
sheet out
try,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Caulfield.
Mayor, if I just might add a couple of comments regarding particularly 1110. So actually even 1337. So the city of Lakewood adamantly opposed both of those bills last session. And the first and foremost reason was because it preempted local authority. And that's been a crux of local government going back, decades. And, we worked closely with AWC to try and carry the water there. However, their response was, well, you're either at the table or you're on the menu. And so we did not, as well as a number of cities, obviously did not persevere there. But one of the things that we regularly pointed out during the public process at the state legislative level is that we already do this. We already allow. So the components of 1110 and 1337, it's in our code. It's just to our community standards and where it's most beneficial. And also that was done with very robust community outreach and input over the last couple of decades, whereas the state legislature did not come to Lakewood and seek input from Lakewood residents. They didn't do an environmental review. They didn't go through SEPA, et cetera, et cetera. It's a hard mandate. The other thing that we pointed out, and Ms. Spear talked about this and it was raised as a question, is infrastructure. Over time, maybe right now, if you add, a couple of homes here or there, that's fine. Water and sewer can handle it, maybe even stormwater. But over time, the fact is that the utilities and the way they're laid out are not set up to accommodate this increased density. It also is going to take away from the urban renewal and urban investment within our core areas, which is a key component of the Growth Management Act. Because now the builders are going to be able to go anywhere. And by the way, I believe the only beneficiary of these bills are builders, because they're going to be able to come in and throw up whatever they're going to throw up and leave. And as Councilmember Anderson pointed out, hardly any parking, no SEPA review. So when somebody comes in and wants to know why there's a fourplex going up in their neighborhood, well, we no longer can notify them because we're prohibited from doing that. So there's a lot of shortcomings with this. And unfortunately, this is the hand that we have been played. But I do want to point out that the city of Lakewood has actually been a leader in the area of middle housing, along with some other cities, particularly Kirkland and Mount Lake Terrace and Marysville, and there's been some other cities. But what this does is it forces us to do it in areas where we just don't think it's in the best interest of our community. And then lastly, I just want to reiterate, this is going to drive gentrification. And it's supposed to address affordable housing. It's only going to make housing affordable for those people who can afford it. And that's what's going to happen here. So, but at the same time, this falls under the umbrella of, we're not, we're being mandated to do this. So I do want to let you know that I know my staff and I were in a, we have very ongoing conversations that can get a little heated at times on this. But the fact of the matter is that this is something that we're mandated to do, and we can try and figure out what we can do to protect our community, but it is a mandate. So just wanted to point that out.
Very interesting. Mr. Boki?
Yeah, I am concerned with this off-street parking restrictions, and our streets just aren't built to handle it. I mean, for whatever reason, we never designed in this city, or the county previously never designed in any parking on streets ever, and almost anywhere. There's just not. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do about it. I mean, do we have to go change our road design standards now, where every time we do something, we're gonna widen these things so we can at least have parking on one side of the street? I mean, a lot of older cities, a lot of neighborhoods in Tacoma have parking on two sides of the street or one side of the street, or whatever the case may be. We just don't have that at all. So we're completely unprepared for that. So I guess there's a question in there. There was some thing that we could talk to the Department of Commerce, but I'm sure they would say no, right? About the on-street parking situation.
That is one of the things that for the accessory dwelling unit bill 1337, if you can identify issues regarding parking that rise to the level of safety concerns, you can do an extension of when this would apply to the city. But I would offer that perhaps the city council does want to take a look at parking as a policy question and decide if there's a new direction that you want to consider as we move into this new era.
I noticed in University Place, in new apartment buildings they're putting in, I was just driving on Bridgeport the other day, and they had installed on-street parking. So clearly they put that in the design standards of the whole thing. Now,
Probably for guests, if nothing else. Probably for
Yeah,
guests.
yeah.
Because you're gonna have guests. come.
There's plenty of parking on the site, it looks like, correct, yeah. So I don't know if the city required it in that case, or they actually looked like they widened a side street and put in the real on a
town center area.
before you get to the town center on the right. As you're coming from Lakewood, there's a couple of new buildings, mixed use, I think, on the bottom, or they're trying to do mixed use, and then. But I noticed that they had redone the street next to it, parallel to it. Mhm. So they probably required the builder to pay for that, but we're gonna have to think of something, or in 30 years, that'll be a mess. Because our streets just are not built that way. They're just not.
It'd be like you're driving in Green Lake, one way. Between cars.
It would seem that if we required something like that, we'd be violating the statute, because we're going beyond our right of way to say, then it becomes on-site parking. So it's off the street. I mean, what do
Yeah.
you do?
Well, more to follow, I'm sure.
Yes.
We kind of go
Yes.
through this process. We got a little bit of time. Thank you very much. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
you for sure on Thursday
Yes.
with a good reader board or some sort of electronic thing that works for you. I'm looking at Ms. Schumacher. Okay. Well, that concludes the items for discussion for this evening. The items tentatively scheduled for the October 2nd regular city council meeting are on the agenda tonight for you to review. And now we'll turn to reports by the city manager.
So since I have the mic, something else about parking. It's my understanding that the reason that the state legislature wants to reduce parking and not provide for parking is because they think everybody's going to take mass transit and buses everywhere. And I just want to say on a personal note, I grew up in an environment of trains and buses. You still had to have a car, and not one, but two. I remember going to the prom, taking the T, the MBTA in Boston. And then guess what? We had to take cabs home. You know why? Because the trains, they shut down at a certain time. And then you don't want to be on a bus after a certain time.
Did that date ever end up in a second date, or was she unimpressed?
She's all
with your
good. She's all
transportation?
good. She's all good. She's all good. But I'm just saying, the fact that somehow people are going to give up cars to live in a TOD, that's great that you have access to the Sounder, because that's all we got here in Lakewood and some bus lines. But this is not, New York City. This is not Boston. This is not Washington, DC, and this is not Chicago. And those are really the only cities that, maybe Atlanta, that have that level of transportation where you can actually take a bus and or a train to do your daily stuff, including going to the grocery store. Having a TOD development here in Lakewood is going to be outstanding. It's going to be great. And so folks can get on the Sounder or take a bus to go to work. But how do they get to the Safeway to go shopping unless they have a car? How do they take their kids to school? Or how do they take their kids to a sporting event or this, that, or the other thing? It's just, it's beyond this issue of unintended consequences. It's just people just not, quite frankly, thinking things through. And that's why I come back when I say that this council and other cities have put in place middle housing and ADU zoning to allow for that, but understanding what their communities are, because all cities on one hand, we're all the same. There's 281 of them. We're all the same because we're all cities, but at the same time, we're all very, very different. So this carte blanche approach from the state legislature, I just don't see it working. I really don't. So, but you folks as the policymakers, you're going to have a tough job. You and your planning commission, as this comes through, and we'll do our best to try and, navigate and bring back, the best that we can. A few updates. So on the legislative front, so your next study session 2 weeks from today, we'll be in front of you with proposed legislative agendas at the state, federal, and the county. Really not any major changes at the federal and the county level. At the federal level, really, it's to continue to come back and pursue another RAISE grant and use the lessons learned from last session. So that's kind of our driving factor there. And then on the state side, really the two outstanding issues from last session is the issue of public safety, given the significant increase in crime and nonsense that not just Lakewood, but all communities are experiencing. And then the issue of geographic equity as it relates to the release of individuals from state facilities. And here in Lakewood, that's Western State Hospital. And you might recall that Representative Bronowski had asked for a report on that. Well, the report finally came due. It was completed in April or May of this year. So we want to build upon that, and hopefully our delegation will be able to sponsor some legislation to ensure that folks are distributed much more equally, because as what the report shows is that Pierce County and Lakewood as a whole are receiving a much higher number of individuals coming out of state facilities than anywhere else in the state. We've always known that, but now we actually have the data. So those are the two issues. Okay. On the public safety side, as you know, I sit on the AWC's legislative committee, and their priorities are in the area of public safety, officer recruitment and retention, but really not focusing on why we need more police officers, which is the increase in crime, which did not rise to the level of a priority through either AWC at the legislative committee level or at their board level. It is a significant issue. However, it's not one that's going to be driven by AWC. The other priorities are infrastructure investments, behavioral health, which is a good one we supported, and then revising the property tax cap. So that means it's going to be incumbent upon Lakewood, as well as all of our partner cities here in Pierce County, to really drive the issue of having the state legislature do something to address the significant increase in crime. Our new police chief, I don't know if I can still call him new, but Chief Smith has, and we're going to share this with you in a couple of weeks, has put together the impact of those legislative changes as it relates to pursuits, use of force, drug possession, and then the real kicker here is juvenile interaction, the huge increase of juvenile crime that's going on out there. And again, it's not the whole spectrum of juveniles. It's a small component. Same thing with the criminal element, but they are causing so much problems out there that it is creating a level of uncertainty as it relates to how people feel, even in their own neighborhoods. And it does need to be addressed, but we are going to share that with you. Actually, I'm going to try and get it to you in advance of that, but just some really, really good empirical evidence and data as it relates to the before and after, as it relates to public safety. So also the city attorney and I were just chit-chatting, and we learned that the city of Marysville is actually looking at an ordinance as it relates to its own court system, a municipal court, of making it mandatory jail time for 3 strikes and you're out, as it relates to, for example, trespassing or drugs in a public place or something like that. So the city attorney, she's going to do some more research on that over the next few weeks, and so that's something that we might be able to bring back to you, at least for some discussion there. And again, it's really to hold those who are breaking the law and placing people in unsafe positions, or just damaging public property, to hold them accountable, because it's getting out of control. It really is. Switching gears, on the economic development front, Becky Newton and her team will be back to talk about tax increment financing. We want to try and get that on a study session sometime in October to get the ball moving toward actually forming a district here in Lakewood. The state statute has a specific timeline. It needs to be in place by June 1st. And so that would kick off with some kind of a resolution, giving us the authority to move forward, to reach out to other taxing districts to be able to at least consider forming this, and then working through this in December, January, February, March, April, and then coming back to you with the formation of a district. And again, our recommendation is that the formation of a tax increment financing district would be used to help finance a future downtown urban park, particularly right across the street. That's kind of our low-hanging fruit item right now. Another legislative item was, you might remember in 2022, after years of advocating on as it relates to Lakewood, was securing funds from the state legislature to do this multimodal analysis within Pierce County, particularly South Pierce County. And that all related to, we'd like to have an Amtrak station here in town. And if you remember, the state legislature did provide funding. However, they extended the scope all the way down into Thurston County as well, which is fine. And then a Thurston County agency, their equivalent of PSRC, called the Thurston Regional Planning Council, they're actually managing that contract. They signed a contract with a contractor late last year, early this year. And so it's moving forward. I recently had a conversation with the gentleman who's driving it. And I just wanted to say, hey, everything that you're doing is great. We're wholeheartedly supportive of that. But please don't forget, here in the Lakewood DuPont area, we would like to see an Amtrak station as future sounder stations, either in Tillicum or in DuPont, are brought online. Because again, it's coming screaming through our community at 60, 70 miles an hour. Slow down and pick us up and take us north and take us south. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Building code changes. You remember earlier this summer, we reported that the State Building Code Council voted to delay the effective date of the 2021 building code to October 29th, which is a month from now. Last week, they actually voted again to delay the adoption all the way out to March 15th of 2024. So essentially another 6 months or so if I did my math there. And that's all focused on some of the energy code issues that are out there. And I know there's some litigation and some court activity and such. So again, it got kicked out. That's actually good for Lakewood because we have several development proposals coming online, particularly some large residential development projects and some mixed use that really they would like to get in under the radar under the old code as opposed to this new code, because it's going to significantly drive up drive up costs, significantly drive up costs, which then in turn drives up the price of housing. Last month in August, we had that fire out in Fort Steilacoom Park. We declared an emergency. The council ratified that. We talked with the fire district today, and long story short, we'll be bringing back to you a proclamation to essentially, undo that. It's no longer needed. So we just need to close the loop on that. So we'll do that as part of your October, bring it forward as part of your October 2nd city council meeting. And then Mayor, I didn't know if you wanted to report on this, so I apologize if I'm stealing your thunder. LTAC met on Friday, and long story short, they are recommending full funding requests for all the applicants across the board to the tune of a little over $1 million, plus our annual contribution to the McGavick Center for $101,000. So that'll be coming forward to you as a study session, and there's under state statute there has to be at least 45 days from Friday's meeting. So that'll be coming forward to you as part of your November 13th study session for review, and then for council consideration as part of your November 20th meeting. And then just a friendly reminder, under the state statute, you as a body, you can either give those recommendations from LTAC a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You cannot change the dollar amount. It's a thumbs up or thumbs down. So just a friendly reminder on that. And then as it relates to your calendar, on Wednesday from 5 to 6:30, there will be a volunteer recognition event for all your wonderful volunteers. Right now, it's a very informal event. 5 o'clock, the doors are going to open, have a little bit of fellowship, some mingling. 5:30 to 6, some welcoming remarks, and Mayor would like you to be part of that, as well as Mary Dodsworth is going to help facilitate and MC that, and then we'll have some pictures and some recognition and some thanks and stuff like that. And then from 6 to 6:30, we'll have a little bit of food and music. And again, just want to thank all of the volunteers that serve this community for everything that they do. Also that same evening at 6:30, down in DuPont, our county council member Jenny Hitchen will be hosting her in-district meeting for the 6th district, and that'll be down in DuPont. And then the following day on the 28th, as has been told, the Mayor's Coffee House will be at the Fort Steilacoom Pavilion. So also, as we look out into October, a couple of items. One is that on October 5th from 1 to 5 p.m., kind of an exciting event showcasing the best of manufacturing here in Pierce County. There'll be a Pierce County Manufacturing Day Expo over at the McGavick Center. And I know, Mayor, you've actually issued a proclamation in support of that. And it'll be in that new advanced manufacturing building that exists at Clover Park Technical College. So if you haven't been to that facility, it's pretty amazing. Also on October 18th, from 8:30 to noon, again at the McGavick Center, is something that will be co-sponsored by both Pierce County Community Navigator Team and the City of Lakewood, an event called Pierce County Thriving Together for Small Businesses, essentially a resources event for small businesses. And again, that'll be from 8:30 to noon. And then sandwiched in between there is one of our major community events, Truck and Tractor Day, on Saturday, October 14th. So with that, Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Ms. Moss.
Mr. Caulfield, the staff appreciation, where is it? At the Clover Park Technical College? It is at the Rotunda?
It is at the Rotunda. Yes, it is. It's at the Rotunda, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only.
Wednesday.
In the Rotunda, okay. The only question I had is on the DSHS study, if we can get a copy of that circulated. Is that appropriate to do? The one that came back to Rep. Bernotsky that we've been waiting on?
Yeah, let's track that. I know we're going to probably include that as part of your packet for the 9th. Yeah, I'll see if I can get that to you sooner.
Ms. Borisella.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Caulfield, Mrs. Spear in her presentation had a number of slides that weren't in our packet. Can we get a copy of this?
Say again.
Mrs. Spear in her packet had a number of slides, or in her presentation had a number of slides that weren't in our packet tonight. Can we get copies of those?
We'll see what we can do. Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Bogie.
Next week, authorizing the execution of an agreement for the Western State Hospital Plan Review. What does that entail for the plan review? So that's going forward with the permitting.
Yes, where is that?
Number 6.
Yes, so you might have heard me mention this. This still might be a tentative. I'll need to touch bases with Mr. Buer. So, and so if it's a go, that's a good news because we heard back from DSHS in the last couple of weeks. So DSHS, given the size and scope of their project, they want, a specific attention from the city. And the way you can get that is having, independent, outside, third-party plan review. And so that's what they're asking for. And so that's what this is, because it's over $50,000. So that's why it's coming back to the city council. It is something that a lot of developers do ask for. But again, the reason this is coming back to you is because it's over $50,000, given the size and the scope of what DSHS is doing down there as it relates to building that huge forensics facility. So that's what that is.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we'll now turn to council comments. Be mindful, folks, we've got a very brief executive session after council comments for about 15 minutes, and I'll announce that after we go around the circle here. Mr. Bokie.
Couple items, PCRC meeting Thursday night. We did not vote on the recommendations of the committee. We had a discussion on the recommendations of the committee, but it got limited because Tacoma folks had to leave for another meeting, and so they decided to just limit. So we didn't vote on the recommendations. It was clear that the people who were in opposition to the recommendations were raring to go, and in opposition to any changes in the so we'll see how it transpires next month. There's at least 5 or 6 items we have to vote on. Right now, I'm anticipating voting yes on most of them. There's one that I'd probably vote no on. I mentioned that to the mayor, who is also representing us. The first one we're going to vote on is really the most substantial one. One we're not going to vote on is just, let's improve the website, which is a nothing burger. And the one that even the people who opposed any changes support are changes in the operating, the TCC's operating procedures, and they're pretty innocuous. I don't think they'll have a real impact on anything. So I don't anticipate much actually in 30 days. Stop by the Nourish building, the old Mattress Ranch building. Met with Sue Potter on Saturday, and there was a lot of activity going on, a lot of packaging of meals that they're doing right there on site. She's just now kind of getting moved in. It's a much larger building when you're in the inside of the building than there is on the outside. Very grateful that the city of Lakewood was so supportive of what's going on there, and reminded me that I've been the same thing I've been reminded of by EFN, that because of some of the things that were instituted during COVID have now gone by the wayside, that the hunger situation is really, really rough, really bad. And of course, food prices are just so high, and for these families, but they're also high for the food banks. So, I mean, it really is a very difficult situation that they're in, but I think the building will prove to be, they haven't made the move yet, I believe. The food bank is not established. I mean, they're using it to have groups come. Groups were coming in there. Virginia Mason was in there on Saturday, and they were they were making these meals and they actually seal these things up. But the food bank itself has not been moved yet from the Methodist Church. And so I did not ask what day that would occur or when that would occur, but they do have some work to do there. And I think the city is working with them on changes.
Great, Mr. Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a chance to participate in the final farmers market of the season last week. And I wanted to express a thanks to our Parks and Recreation Department for putting on such a great season of farmers markets, from the vendors to the food trucks and the concerts. I think I managed to eat at every food truck eventually over the course of the market. So some good options there. But that leads me to wonder what our residents can look forward to in the off season for places to gather and have community involvement. So we have Truck and Tractor Day coming up, and I know there's still yoga at the pavilion that people can participate in, but it'd be good to know what else is an opportunity for folks to gather and see each other, even as the weather turns a little south. So that's something to keep in mind. Wanted to thank the Arts Commission folks for coming in. As I said earlier, they should be proud of what we've accomplished this year. And I look forward to what's still to come as we have more art installations around the city. And finally, I want to thank Assistant City Manager Kraus for filling in the last couple of weeks. She did an excellent job. So, thank you.
Very good, thank you. She did bring snacks, Mr. Caulfield. Just saying. Just saying. She's established a standard. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Anderson.
I would just note, going back to one of our earlier discussions, or some of the city managers' comments regarding the need for police officers and getting to the root cause, that I saw on a television report that as of pretty much currently, I think it was actually the end of last month, King County was reaching a peak of 12,000 vehicles stolen this year, and Pierce County is at 6,000 vehicles stolen. That's about the month of January, for example, last year, there were an average of over 30 cars a day stolen in Pierce County. And you can't chase them, and you can't put juveniles in jail.
Deputy Mayor Moss.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I appreciated the arts presentation tonight. It was the first time that I can say I truly understand art. It was very good display. Thank you. That's it.
Well, very good. Just a few updates on my end. On last week, I think it was, I forget which day it is now, Thursday, I had a half-day board retreat for the Pierce Transit Board. And the focus was to work on establishing a 6-year plan as to, what the public wants in terms of transportation, in terms of reliability, routes, all those kinds of things within the available funding. And, more to follow on that, but they're trying to do kind of the meat and potatoes right. They've given up a little bit short term on the BRT project, as I reported last time. They're taking, and that will then allow a realignment of the capital side of the budget, because a lot of money was dedicated toward the Moby project for the big electrical buses that were going to go down the BRT that they no longer right now need at this point. So it allows them to take a pause and really focus on the bread and butter, providing transit to those who need it in the community as best they can. So I'll report back once they get the 6-year plan and the strategic plan kind of fleshed out from our 4-hour retreat. Following that, we had the PCRC meeting that Mr. Boki already reported out on. It'll be interesting to see how the scoring criteria changes, if at all. LTAC was my day on Friday. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met. We did review all of the applicants and of course had an interview process. They do a presentation. We have opportunity to ask questions. The amount available for tourism related marketing as opposed to capital was about $1.3 million. The total asks were something about $1.1 million-ish. And so the committee elected to proceed with the total funding since it was under the available funds. And they all did a good job presenting. The needs were great. The impact of our lodging tax decisions in the last couple of years have really helped a lot of these organizations flourish. Dean Burke, who is the Tacoma Trade and Tourism guy, was very pleased. He did offer the opportunity for us to have a study session next year in advance of the lodging tax meeting because he does a lot of sitting in his capacity as the guy for Tacoma Tourism and Travel to talk about how we perhaps can do things a little bit better on the lodging tax review process. He thinks it might make the process more streamlined. So we're going to do that next year. So more to follow on that, but good recommendations, and it'll be good event money well placed for lots of organizations that do good work in bringing people together in gathering spaces that exist in Lakewood. So really, I think you'll be impressed with the money that's going to be invested. Okay, without further ado, we will now recess into executive session for only 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 4231-10-1G to review the performance of a public official. We will not take any action following the executive session other than to come back and adjourn the meeting. So at this point, we'll be in recess.